Alright, so we've got a pretty good setup here already. We've got our HDRI set, we've got our land deforming, it's looking pretty nice, some nice peaks, good composition. But what I want to do is get a little bit more in the foreground to mess with, some places of higher detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command C and Command V and duplicate this geometry. Alright, so we've got two of these now. I'm going to select this one, make sure it's orange, it's easy to not select it. And I'm going to change the strength to 0.25. That way it's going to make this one very shallow. And just to recap what I did is I'm in the displace modifier of the second duplicate object there, and I set that strength to 0.25. That's going to make this very shallow mountains, that sort of thing. Then let's go ahead and move this over top of our mountain there. And then what this is going to do for me is it's going to allow me to get my camera. Let's go back there. And if you're noticing now, I can get this this scene right in front of my camera. This scene, this geometry right in front of my camera, and it's going to allow me just to create a little bit of like a, we'll call it kind of like the foreground framing. So let's pop back into my camera view. Yeah, like that, right? A little bit of foreground framing. That way we've got kind of this like snowy vista that we're going to cross right here, and then we're going to see our big, huge mountain in the background. Now that I've got this set up, I think I want this to be a little bit further to the right. Maybe I'll scale this just a tad, stretch. Just a tad. That way I can still hug that low valley where the sun's peeking through, but that way it collects this a little bit more nicely. So I think that looks great. It cuts across the bottom third of our image. We're framed by the two big mountain peaks. Looks pretty nice. I'm going to hit Command S, or you can go to File, Save. If you haven't saved this scene already, it's a good time to do so. And now that I've got my foreground established, if I wanted to go further, I could drop a few more mountains in the background just to set this up a little bit more. But in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and get in with a bit of my surfacing now. So I'm going to go into the Shading tab, and you can see my scene pops up quite nicely. And I need some materials to really bring this scene to life. So I'm going to need some kind of snowy, rocky materials. And so we're going to kind of do a bit of a material generation session here. All right, let's get into the Materials tab. And I'm going to create a new material. Principled BSDF, no problemo. And we're going to do a combination of displacement maps and normals and all that kind of thing. So if you remember from last time, I'm going to start from a base color, and I'm going to choose Image Texture, Color, and I'm going to click Open, and I'm going to go into my textures, and I've got a handful of snow textures and rock textures and that sort of thing. So we're going to start with the snow. Give me my snow 0054K and click Open. And just as a quick heads up, I pulled these snow textures from Polyhaven, which is a great website. If you're not familiar, I'm going to pull this over here just a moment. So here's Polyhaven, and you can do things like go into terrain, and you can look for all kinds of things. You can search for snow, sand, rock, natural. Here's snow, and you can get all kinds of great snowy textures at Polyhaven. So give that site a view, and maybe you can grab some snow textures for yourself here. I'm going to reorient just a little bit, shift middle click to kind of shift that scene, just so that we can get more visibility on our my material nodes here. And so I pumped in the base color. Let's go ahead and do a Command C, Command V on that. That way we can have this pumped into our roughness channel. And then don't forget to change the texture, because I have a roughness map. So I want to make sure roughness map is there. And we're going to get the normal map, right? So we're going to drag that out. And we'll do bump normal map. Normal map, normal. And then that color channel, oops, come on, buddy, is going to be image texture, open, textures, snow normal GL, and there we go. Accidentally close that. Sometimes you can close these just by hitting these little drop downs if you need some more room. All right, so I've got a normal, I've got a roughness map, I have a color map, all feeding into this principled BSDF. So far so good. But we're going to make this a little bit more complicated because Command S just to save before I render, make sure I don't break anything. Let's hit a quick F12 and see how this looks. I'm going to go ahead and pause while the rendering happens, and I'll check back in a second. All right, here's my render so far. Snow looks really great on that front area. We're getting these like really nice kind of snow drifts. We're getting some good detail on the mountains, but we can do better. So let's get after it. I'll close my render. And now I want to kind of blend this. Like the snow cover is pretty nice, but there's some like blended rock and snow and that sort of thing that we can do with some advanced material texturing. So let's get into that step. All right, so to blend this, let's say we wanted to blend this snow texture and say like maybe some rock textures, that sort of thing. Well, first we need a mixer added. So we can go to add and we can search mix, and I like mix shader, and we can drop that right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to feed our snow into the first channel of the mix shader. Then we need something to mix with that snow. So what are we going to pick? Maybe some like cracky, rocky, kind of like dirty rock texture. And what we can do is we can take this entire BSDF, Command C, Command V, and it essentially created the same structure that we want, which is the color channel, the roughness channel, and the normal. And it's allowed us to create that, kind of duplicate that structure, and then we can pair that into the other shader that we're going to mix. So we're going to mix snow with whatever else we pump in, right? So that's need some other textures. Right now these are all snow, so let's go ahead into our texture channel and let's go ahead and pull in, let's do this rocks ground I've got. So I'm going to pull in my rocks ground. This says diffuse. Diffuse and color are interchangeable, so I pulled this from a different site. So whether yours says color channel or diff or diffuse, that's the one you want there. So that's my color channel. Let's pull in something for the roughness. Where are we at? Rocks, roughness map. And our normal map, if you would please. Rocks, normal map. Great. So that's feeding into all of the proper places there. And actually, I'm noticing now my roughness map is coming in as a color. We want that as a non-color. And we want this as a non-color. There we go. Better, 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 better. All right. So now we have rocks and snow blending, but they're blending in like basically just 50% of each, right? It's not a very like organic look. So if I do another render, let's hit F12, and I'll go ahead and pause for a moment and get to the final product. We'll see if the blend looks any good at all. And I'm not yet at the final render here, but you can see that it's blending them, but it's not super great. You know, it's just kind of a smattered blend. So let's do that a little bit better. To do that, we can have some other texture inform the factor, because right now it's just a 50-50 blend. So we can click add, and we can search for maybe a noise texture or something like that to inform how that factor is calculated. All right, so I'm going to click add, and I'm going to search for Musgrave texture, and this is kind of like a noise-based texture informer that you can use for pretty much anything. So I'm going to take this Musgrave, and I'm going to pop out its value into the factor. And what that's going to do is it's going to blend these two materials in a way that is, well, it's a little bit different than just the 50-50, right? So let's see if we can get some different results here. So I'm going to change the scale. I'm going to pump that up to something like, say, 90, and you can already start to see some changes. The detail, I'm going to put it something like 18. The dimension maybe at 5, luminosity at 5, and just kind of see how it changes things. All right, so let me mouse around this guy. Let's see how that looks. And since I'm really not getting the results I want, I think I need to add something else between this texture and that factor in order to give it a little bit more control. So right now we've got just it pumping straight in. Let's go ahead and add a modifier. Let's go ahead and add a ramp. And that ramp is going to give us a little bit more stark control over how it blends between one shader and another. So I'm going to add color ramp, plop that right in the middle. Height goes into the factor of the color ramp, color goes into the factor of the mix shader. And then what I can do is I can mess with the white values and the dark values, right? And we can get some difference there. So look at this. Look at the change that happens there when you bring that all the way down. That's pretty nice to see. So we want those those little bits of rock kind of making through. So as we mess with the detail there, mess with the dimension a little bit, there we go. Now we're getting, yeah, that's pretty good. And this linearity is going to get it to be a little bit more grainy. And then we can continue to mess with scale too. So I had the scale up quite high, and I think I was doing that just because of the scale, but sorry, the scale of the geometry. But let's drop it to something like that and see how that looks. See how we're getting a little bit more of like that rock to show through. I think we're gonna like that a little bit better. So I have my scale quite high, and we want to change that. So let's see what looks good there. Hit the F12 key, and we'll come back when the render's complete. All right, feeling quite a bit better. We're starting to see some of that rock show through. It's not perfect, but I think it's getting pretty good, especially for like an exercise or a first start to a project type level. So we're certainly seeing some of that rock show through. Might not be perfect yet, but we'll get there. All right, so one more change that we're going to make in this video, and then we might kind of split off and do some more steps in a different video, is I want to mess with the scaling of the texture overall. Now we can do this in the UV editor, but I kind of like doing it in the material here. And so what we can do is we can add a scaling modifier to all these textures. That way we can kind of have a global value that says make this texture collection smaller and more detailed or wider and whatever. So we're going to add another thing to our material node editor here. One moment. What I'd like you to add is in your material node editor, add a mapping node. And I'll put the mapping node here on the left side. And I'll zoom into it for just a second. But it's going to allow us to do things like scale, rotate, and change location of things. So I'm going to change this vector. Rather, I'm going to inform the vector of each of these by this mapping node. And here's where the node editor again becomes powerful, is because you can do all of this with one kind of controller versus having to try and change this in each UV of each piece of geometry, which would be a nightmare. So hopefully this node editor, even though it's a little complicated, is showing its value now that we're doing this. All right, so we've got the vector now being input here, and let's see how this looks. I may actually, before I change settings, I might want to do a quick, let's convert this to like real-time render. There we go. Should get us better results. Yeah, look how good. All right, so we're looking pretty nice. I accidentally went under my mountain. Hold on. Let's shift move. Get kind of like sort of what my camera view looks like while we're messing with this. All right, so we're looking pretty good. The snow is more scattered now. But let's see if we do a scale of like 0.5 on each of these and see how it changes the look. Let's see, let's go to 0.25. 0.25. Not seeing massive changes. But let's go ahead and throw another render in there just to see what it looks like a little bit larger and see how it's doing. As I was going through some of the mapping changes, I didn't really like any of the results. So while you can scale some of your UVs using the mapping tool, we're going to go ahead and forego that for now. So we might be kind of at the tail end of this video just to kind of keep things moving. And in the next one, we might look at some render options to kind of get a little bit more out of this scene. Just kind of punch it up just a little bit.